Hello, welcome to another edition of Talk Time. I'm Meredith McCarthy, and I'm going to be talking to Teresa Saunders today, one of my colleagues, about sports motivation. So this is going to be hopefully useful to the people out there who are into sports, who want to gain that competitive edge, or maybe thinking about how you might work with people who are wanting to get better mentally and improve their game. So hi there, Teresa. How are you today?
Hi, Meredith. I'm good, thank you. I'm really looking forward to this week's topic on sports motivation and performance.
When we're kind of looking at how many people come in for this sort of thing, it's not an everyday topic that people come in, but it's definitely something that I find many athletes who just want to gain that little mental edge will come in for a couple of sessions just to get that right mindset. Have you ever talked to anyone and supported someone through helping them, achieve that goal sports-wise?
Yes, I have, Meredith. I actually get quite a few college students that come to me wanting to enhance their sports performance.
Mm. Can you tell me about one that you've perhaps that stands out for you?
I had a young rugby player, and they've always had this aspiration to play for a certain rugby team. I'm not going to say that because, client-patient confidentiality. So he wanted to play for a well-known rugby league team, and he had been scouted so far, but because he'd been scouted, he'd actually lost some of his confidence for playing and his ability. So we actually coached him, and he's now actually got an under-21s contract with that particular team.
That's amazing. So when we're kind of looking at, that journey that someone takes, sometimes they are at a point where they're just beginning something and it's that long game, it's that long journey. And then suddenly as therapists, it's really nice to see people get to the other side of that vision and really, achieve that goal, eh?
It was, and it was really exciting watching him gain his confidence back again and just excel more and more. And then when he got that phone call, it was just amazing. Yeah.
Mm. When we think about the idea of hypnosis and the part that it has to play, um, our own inner mind is really a big part of that. So the story that a client is telling themselves is crucial to their success. Now, if we can get that client to understand how powerful their internal dialogue is and gain control over that in a really empowered way, that can be a game changer for many. There was a moment where a really incredible coach was interviewed, and he would be brought in to help failing teams become A-grade top teams. And he would turn these failing teams around again and again and again. So he had this formula. And when interviewed, they said, what do you do? How do you make such a big difference in such a short period of time? And he said, well, I do the same every time. Every time the people come off the sports field, I run through all of the game and what I felt was amazing and what was done right. But I never, ever notice or focus on what they did wrong. Because the moment I were to do, well, if I were to do that, it would cause them to start to second guess themselves and blame themselves and get into this negative mindset. I don't want that negative mindset. I only want a winner's mindset. And to do that, you've got to show people what is the best thing. So when you explain why that was a good play, all the people who are listening are upgrading. They're imagining in their mind that dress rehearsal of success. So that can be a really powerful thing to understand, that internal inner coach inside you. If you fixate on all the things you did wrong, then you're going to disempower yourself. If, however, you focus on all the things you did well and you imagine what you're going to do well next time, you are locking into a winner's mindset.
Yeah, our inner mind and a critic can actually do a lot of harm because often it's us that sees that and not other people.
Mm. I was watching an Iron Man series, and Joe Lawn, who had won the women's division of Iron Man, I think 3 years running. She was standing next to me by the finish line, and she couldn't understand in her mind how you couldn't walk it quicker than some of the people who were so-called running. They said she thought they must have just stopped for ages and just, rested too many times. She could not compute how slow they did it. And so in her mind, she was at another level again, where sort of coming second was not an option. She was truly had the winner's mindset. But there was a lot of positive elements to Joe. And when we're kind of looking at being driven, I think a person has to want to be a winner as well. There needs to be that. And if they've got pressure from family or friends to be that winner and it's not really coming from them, that can really get in the way. So I think you have to have a level of hunger to be at that top level. So not everyone's going to be an elite athlete, let's face it. But there might be a goal that you want to achieve, a normal standard goal. And you think, yeah, I've never done it before. I'd like to do it. This is where a lot of people come in too for that sports support and that mental support. It may not be about them winning, but it might be about them competing full stop, like something they've never done before and they just want a little bit of drive, a little bit of more confidence, and away they go. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that kind of thing where, we're not always working on just elite athletes. We might be working on just average people who just want to give something a go.
Definitely. I mean, you also get a lot of children that come in that actually want to just compete at that secondary school level of gymnastics or rugby or netball, etc. But to them, that's a big competition. It is, and I'm not knocking that's not a big achievement, and they want to perform well. You can tell a difference and notice a difference when it's actually their dream to do this and not they're trying to live their parents' dream for them. And there is a big difference in that, unfortunately, to how someone performs, whether it's their desire to do or whether they're desiring to do it for someone else.
Mm. Yeah, and I think too, who knows what your driver is in life, and it can change too. Like I was really good at swimming when I was younger, and I was quite competitive. Used to go and train all the time, and I remember doing one race where I was clearly winning, but I thought it was a false start because everyone was so far behind me. I thought maybe I would jump the gun, and I stood up and touched the bottom and looked around, and I was disqualified. And at that moment, my brain just went, stuff it. I'm not going to compete anymore. I found it unfair. I couldn't understand why they would penalise someone who was clearly winning because they went to check whether everyone else was still in the game. So I lost passion. It was like, no, I don't want to do this anymore. And I was only young. But it didn't stop me from enjoying swimming in general. I still love to do that. And I still have, done open water swims and things like that, which is a challenge in itself. But again, things can happen that can really take someone's confidence or stuffing out of them. And I think when someone presents, you want to be curious as a therapist to go, okay, well, have they ever been at that top level, or have they just got a vision of achieving at that level? So getting to know your client and their history and why that's important to them is a big part of a therapeutic session. Mm.
I think you can also look at perhaps what's going on outside the court or the swimming pool or whatever, you were talking earlier about being positive and positive mindset. And quite often onlookers don't realise how much potential harm they can cause by saying, oh, if only you'd done this, or your arm wasn't quite straight, or you didn't do that. And that gets in sometimes in some people's heads, and they're focusing on that, which is actually stopping their ability to perform.
Mm. So there was an amazing experiment years ago where they got 3 basketball teams, and they were measuring how well they were doing before the experiment. They asked one basketball team to sit down and just imagine getting a goal. So they were to go to the court, sit down on the court, and imagine getting a goal time after time. And they did this for a month, something like that. And then the other team were not to practice at all for a month, and the other team were to practice as usual. Which team do you think was the top in the way of showing most improvement over the month?
I'm going to add on the team that imagined doing it.
Yeah. So, when we're thinking about only success, you're only thinking about success, you're not thinking about failing, you're only imagining success. That's a big part of switching the brain on and helping the body and the brain to calibrate.
Mm.
Mm. So I was doing training for across the Taupo swim, which is a 4.2K swim. And I had a shoulder issue. And every time I get to about 2Ks, my shoulder would start playing up. And I'm thinking, wow, how am I going to do 4.2 in open water? That was a length I'd never done before. And then I got sick. I was out of the pool for about 3 weeks, and I got a really bad cough, one of those ones that if you were to go swimming, you'd probably kill yourself because you'd be coughing and stuttering. So I was out for 3 weeks. But just before, just as I got sick, I had this phone call, and it happened to be someone who noticed on one of my posts that I was doing this swim, and they were a swim coach. And they told me about the style called total immersion swimming. And they said, you might like this. It's conservative to your joints. And instead of overreaching, it's 90 degrees and all sorts of other things. And he said it was developed for open water swimmers. Why don't you have a look on YouTube and look through the swim drills and see whether it's something that would really help you? And I'm thinking, great. So every day I went in and I looked at the total immersion swimming and the drills and why they did what they did and all the science behind it. And as I was doing that and watching and meditating on it, I guess I was envisioning myself doing that. So after 3 weeks, I get back in the pool and I was able to do it straight away. Like I thought, wow, I'll give this swimming a go. So one kick to one stroke. Not only was it happening, I was quicker than my old style. And I got to 3Ks immediately, and I got to the end of that pool and I cried with happiness. It was like, oh my goodness, this is incredible. And I thought, wow, I'm going to get my daughter to film me up above and below just to make sure I've got it right. And sure enough, I had it absolutely on with the stroke. That's Teresa's dog in the background if anyone wants to.
Wants to join in on the conversation. He's listening to how he can get his sports performance up.
Absolutely. So when we're kind of looking at that idea of mind and body connection, when we dressed through her success, my mind was going into hypnosis. I was hypnotizing myself into envisioning success, and then boom, my body just followed. So it's quite amazing how when we shift our mind, our body's just waiting for clear instructions. Yeah. So, when we're looking at the idea of hypnosis, that daydreamer is really powerful. So we need to be very careful about what we're daydreaming, don't we, Teresa?
Yes, we do. Yes. Yeah. I mean, once we go into that state, we can access all those files and pull out what we want to, but sometimes we don't always pull out the positive ones. as we're aware, when we start to look at things, we can pull out negative things as well. Like you say, it's being mindful about what you're dreaming about sometimes.
100%.
Mm.
The other thing is too, we were talking a little bit about hopping into someone you admire. So using an imagination exercise where someone's in hypnosis and you get them to imagine their hero, or you get them to imagine what it would be like to be their athlete, and imagine hopping into their athlete's body, and imagining being there and doing all of those things. It can be extremely powerful, eh?
It certainly can. Yeah, the hero doing it like that. I mean, if they want to don't feel comfortable in doing that or can't think of something and they used to perform at a really high level, you can also do that by getting them to go back to that scene and imagine looking down and watching what they were doing, so that you can then anchor that in again to them so that they perform at that high level and ability.
Mm, absolutely. I remember recently getting a guy who was very high up in martial arts, and for a moment there, I must have got into all of the karate movies I'd ever seen, and like, I've never done martial arts, let's be honest, right? But I was channeling my guru. I was thinking, if I was to be a Zen master, or what do you know, martial arts master, what advice would I give him? And something really interesting came through, and it said, whenever you go and reach beyond where the human being is, so you're actually reaching to a target that's beyond the body, and that's going to create a very, very strong blow or reaction. And that's exactly what he did. And I hate to say this, but he did win, but the other guy was not very healthy.
Oh dear.
He wasn't very healthy. But when we're looking at that idea of planting a seed, a thought, and then doing that in a hypnotic space, it can definitely help people to get that competitive edge that they're looking for. This guy was extremely competitive, which is why he wanted hypnosis to get even more into that place. So, yeah, again, when we're working with clients, depending on what the client is needing, will depend on potentially your approach. So, one size does not fit all.
No.
Yeah, we've got to really listen to what the client is after and really go from there. So, it's not a pre-scripted thing.
No, and it's like we've said in the past, listening to what your client actually desires. Don't make that goal for them. It could be, their big achievement could be something that's a local thing or even just personal to themselves, not necessarily like international or nationally. We all have different goals and aspirations.
Mm, yeah. So, when we're looking at that idea of empowered thinking, sports performance is definitely in that league.
Mm.
So when we're looking at that internal story, just think you got to check in with your client. What is the story they currently have? What are the beliefs they currently hold? What are the dreams, goals, and desires they currently have? What would they deem successful? Because what you have in your mind and what they have, you've got to check in and say, are we coming from the same page here?
Yeah, definitely. Is there anything major, Meredith, that you would say to people that is a must that they need to do in a session when someone comes for sports performance?
I think that internal dress rehearsal way before time is useful because it's a compounding of suggestion. So we want to exercise that muscle of intention of how we want to shift stuff and have enough mental dress rehearsal so when we go live, we've had a chance for the amygdala to believe that we've done it 10 times already. So we can kind of just get off the gate and do it. Kind of like that moment where I was out for 3 weeks and I had 3 weeks of dress rehearsing.
Yeah. So is there anything specific you would sort of recommend that people would do prior, do they get them to do homework prior to coming to you, or do you wait and do that in your pre-talk? How would you suggest people actually move forward with that?
Hmm. Well, the way that I structure my sessions is I do a 90-minute session, and that first bit I want to know really about that client and what they want and so on. So I know very little about a client before they arrive. So they just make an
Mhm.
appointment, they turn up. During that unpacking, it will tell me a little bit about what motivates them. It will tell me a little bit more about their background, and also check in, are they visual? So they might have aphantasia where they can't visualize or see themselves in their mind's eye. Some people can't see pictures. So if you're trying to get someone to visualize something, it's going to be a big fat fail if you go down that trip,
Yeah.
that road. But it doesn't mean that you can't get them to imagine how that's going to feel, how their body's going to move. We can really get into the other senses. We don't need to imagine what it's going to look like.
Mhm.
Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Yeah.
Hmm. When we're looking at that idea of achieving goals, often too we need to ask the client how realistic that goal is. Because let's imagine that there is an unrealistic expectation of what they're able to achieve in a short period of time. That's unfair to get someone to imagine they're going to be this ace straight away where they've never competed ever in that field or sport. And it would be really a pity to think that they're going to be first and compete and get over the line where you might be competing with people who have been doing it for 10 years.
Mm.
So that's important too, because otherwise it may feel like it's a fail. But actually, when we go, well, we want to look for improvement, but what does that really mean in a realistic way? So, yeah, you can hypnotize someone to have, great sports mindset, but it doesn't mean that specific human's ever going to be the top in their field. So, being realistic with someone. Mm. What
Mm.
are your thoughts on that?
Oh, definitely. I mean, they can't come in and never have played a sport and then suddenly think they're going to run away and be this top athlete within, I don't know, so many sessions or months, because although we can maximise performance, it's got to be realistic as well. And every individual's capability is different.
Mm.
Yeah. So it's listening to their expectations and their goals and aspirations and seeing where you can get within that field that's realistic.
Yeah.
And maybe
Another,
that you get them to look at maybe you get them to look at what their actual goal is and talk through, and they'll know whether that's achievable or not.
mm. Another story around Jo Lawn. I can remember the one year that she did not come first, she came second. It was raining really hard, and she got a puncture, and her hand kept slipping, trying to change the tyre, and it annoyed her. There's a light way
Mm.
of putting it. It really annoyed her because she lost her first place. She came in second, but she still came in second, which is a pretty big thing, even after having that kind of stuff. And she was really hard on herself. And that's what it takes to be first for year after year. So even though it was beyond her control, even though she couldn't control the weather, she couldn't control that she got a flat tire, she couldn't control that it was slippy, there was just stuff happens. But next year she came back and she won. So when you're looking at determination and those top level of minds, when it comes to competitive form, there's
Mm.
a that goes into it, not just mental, it's physical too, like how many hours that someone puts into it. that's going to make a big difference.
And often your top performers, and even like locally, they spend hours a week actually training.
Yep. It's hardcore dedication, and even on their slow days, it's like what we could probably not, our mere humanness could not achieve when they're having like a rest day. It's quite amazing.
But again, it's the mindset, isn't it? And if you want something, you push yourself towards your goal. Yeah.
Absolutely. So when we're kind of looking at that idea of hypnosis, self-hypnosis, when we're daydreaming and we're imagining success in our mind, we are priming ourselves to be more successful, regardless of the topic. So sports performance is just one of many things that we can really gain a competitive advantage using the right mindset, using self-hypnosis. But all hypnosis technically is self-hypnosis. So as a hypnotherapist, we're there to guide someone through, but they're the one with the magic on the inside. They're the one imagining that idea that you've invited them to think about.
That's right. We're not the fixer. We actually support them to do the work themselves, so they do the work. Yeah.
Absolutely. Are there any other things that you can think of that you'd like to share out there today about the sports performance?
I don't think so. I think we've gone about goals and being realistic goals, and you're using your mindset. You can use your hero to go into. But if people are more interested, then do reach out, drop a line in our box. We will happily answer people's questions and queries. Same as if they have any other topics, then drop a note down for us, because we'd be happy to talk on anything specific that people are interested in. After all, this talk time is for potential students or people doing hypnotherapy that would just like to learn a little bit more. They get a taste of your flair, Meredith, and hopefully they sign up and join the school.
Yes. So look, if you want to find out more about signing up for the school, getting a discovery call, I can call you one-on-one. We can talk about what it all entails. Visit the website www.nzach.ac.nz. And you can find out all the details about what our 18 modules run through. We do have specific topics that we work with in those modules. It is a big chunk of hypnosis and advanced hypnotic techniques, along with NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, and language patterns. So there's a lot involved in the diploma course, but it's well worth it. It's a really nice one. So you'll go away at the end of that feeling competent and confident about your ability as a clinical hypnotherapist. So please, if you are interested, visit the website, and that's us for now. So thank you again, Teresa, for being here and supporting this journey of unpacking and sharing stuff out there to the world.
Thanks, Meredith. Until next time, everyone, look forward to seeing you. Take care.
Cool. Bye.
Bye.